Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. The series starts with an entity explaining that it was reincarnated as a sword. Over hundreds of long years it met many masters. And it made them into heroes who would remain in history, and then he met his comrade. My boy born in a nameless rural village. They roamed the world together, and achieved feats that no one could ever hope to match. In a snowy mountain on the continent we see a massive explosion. Leon sits there coughing, and it looks like he's in a bad state as he's on the defensive with a giant dragon standing before him, pressuring him. It then starts the charge up of breath attack, and Lenberg stands back up. Just as the attack begins flying in straight towards him. He tightens the grip on his blade, releasing a blue aura. Completely overpowering the dragon's attack, he tells the sword that it's time to get going. He prepares himself, and charges straight in towards the dragon, leaping at its head. He raises his sword high into the air. The first swing cuts off its horn, the second its neck, the third cuts down its torso, and he continues making his way all the way down, and they end up defeating the white dragon. And his comrade Lenberg became the ruler of a kingdom, and he along with the legend of the dragon slayer was passed down to his comrade's descendants. And we learn that he actually has a name, and that is Gruhorn, as Lenberg told Gruhorn to look after his descendants. Gruhorn opens his eyes after hearing some noise, and wonders why it's so damn noisy. He says it's distracting, and he wants to know what insolent fool is shaking his body like this. Some fat fucking chud yells saying that from now on the master of the sword is him. He's drooling out of the mouth, and the knights tell him that it's an item that nobody except the majesty may touch, and that he needs to return it. Gruhorn asks if this is really meant to be a prince, because to him it looks like a pig, and the prince says that there is nothing in this country he cannot touch. Gruhorn begins to actually sweat a little bit, and says this can't be. And he decides to check it with his authority, which is called judgment. This little pig's name is Adrian Lenberg. He's 16 years old, has no aptitude, and bro's trait is literally morbid obesity. Gruhorn says that seeing the name Lenberg he is indeed his comrade's descendant. However, how does a descendant of the sword saint have literally no potential? Adrian says that if he has this then his majesty, and the other nobles won't be able to ignore him any longer. Gruhorn calls him ridiculous, saying that he's just babbling as he pleases. But Adrian yells asking Gruhorn the great dragon slayer to lend him his strength. Gruhorn asks if he's crazy since he has no intention of lending his strength to him, and Adrian starts screaming out his name while swinging the sword recklessly. Everybody tells him to calm down, and he makes his way towards them all, while swinging at the knights who scatter as he barks at them for trying to order him around. He says that if he can just get his hands on Gruhorn's power, trash like them would be lightweight, but his fat ass little cankles can't support his weight, and he slips. But as he's falling the blade is pointed straight towards his gut, and he realizes it too late before everybody in the room watches this pig impales himself. One of the maids starts screaming, and Gruhorn says he can't believe this just happened. The maid begins running off to call for the royal physician. Gruhorn is confused, saying that the one stabbed by him was the scoundrel, but for some reason his vision is getting blurry, and at this rate he's gonna faint for the first time in his sword life. It turns out there's a saying in the kingdom that if the Prince Adrian succeeds the throne there is no future for the kingdom at all. He inherited not a speck of royal talent, yet he is S-tier in arrogance. He has no ability, but his greed is also at the top of the kingdom. He's a cruel, stupid, lazy pig, and this was how everyone knew the first prince. Like a dark cloud hanging over the kingdom's future after such a prince was stabbed, and wandered the border death before waking up a strange rumor spread. People talked about how he's changed a bit. He doesn't flip the dining table like before, and he hasn't been gathering his gang of delinquents either. All the maids say that even the notorious first prince must feel some shame, and he's lying low because he's scared after accidentally almost unaliving himself. However, the person in question, Prince Adrian, had no interest in such rumors, because it was none other than Gruhorn in this little pig's body saying that he can't believe he killed his comrade's descendant, but also stole his body. Some of the maids tell him that his majesty has arrived, and he needs to hurry and adjust his attire to prepare to welcome him. Of course Gruhorn says no, the dude didn't even visit, so why would he do this all of a sudden? The maid says that the royal knights were still nearby, and he needs to watch his words as we see one of them appear directly behind her like a horror movie. He says he heard he came back from the dead, but it seems his temper is exactly the same. He tells the maid that she may leave since his majesty is not expecting anything anyways. Gruhorn wonders who this is, and the knight says that they still have the bond of master and student, yet he's pretending he doesn't even know him. Gruhorn wonders if this is really the pig's teacher. He tells the knight that his memory is a mess. He feels like he might remember who he is, but then again maybe not. The knight is surprised to hear this, and then they are alerted to the fact that His Majesty the King has arrived. Gruhorn says this must be the scoundrel's father, but his eyes open widely, and he says that he's better than he thought. He thought time had passed, and the lion's blood had diluted into dog's blood, but seeing the king perhaps that isn't the case. The king says that seeing as how he didn't even greet his father, it seems surviving an encounter with death does not change a person. The knight says that he has just heard that His Highness's memory is not intact. The other knights say that's awful, and wonder why the royal physician didn't report such a big thing to them, and that they need to rush an examination. The royal physician eventually makes his way there, and they lay Gruhorn on the bed. The physician says he can't find any abnormalities in his body, however it is possible that it's a temporary condition caused by mental shock. The king says that the memory loss is surprising, and Gruhorn wonders if he caught on, but the king says it truly is convenient, and if he says he does not remember now, that means that everything he has done until now never happened. Gruhorn realizes that that's not good optics, and the king says that sometimes one makes wrong choices, and one may commit acts condemned by all, but if one realizes this later, and never makes the same mistake again, that too can be called the process of learning. But he has forgotten all of that since it has all become as if it never happened. He has not taken a single step forward from his past errors, and he will not be able to move forward in the future either. The knight tells him to calm down, and Gruhorn says that he's really chewing him out, and that he stepped in some serious shit, and forget being treated like a prince. It looks like he won't even be treated like a human, and he wonders what this kid's been doing like this. Who I assume is his mother calls out to him, and she calls him Ian, which I guess is Adrian's nickname, but she says that she heard everything, and he must be so confused, but his memories will return soon, and regardless of his trivial past, it doesn't matter if he doesn't remember it or not. To think his beautiful face was almost wasted away like this, she can't believe it. Gruhorn says it's a face only a mother can love. She says that she's happy that his eyes have opened like this, and he must never touch these dangerous objects again. If something had gone wrong, and he didn't wake up, she doesn't even want to think about it. She shakes her head. Gruhorn says that he's sorry, but her kid is already dead, though this is really burdensome. She eventually says that she's gonna leave to let him rest, and after she does, he sighs. He says his comrade begged him to look after his descendants, yet he killed them the first time he woke up. It wasn't intentional, but he's still the one who ended his life. Since it turned out like this, he doesn't know what to do, and he needs to live well for the dead guy's share too. When he was reincarnated as a sword, he spent his whole life cleaning up after others, but now it's a fat body with no talent, but it doesn't matter, he just needs to build up power again, and he's raised tons of geniuses. First he needs to forge a mana heart. He hops up, and takes in a deep breath, and starts to force the mana into his chest as it starts swirling around his heart, and then disperses. He touches his chest confused, saying that he can't believe his body can't accept it. He tries it again, but it disperses. Yet another attempt, desperately trying, he says that he'll do this again, and again until he can forcefully make it stick, but over, and over it's the same result. He falls onto the floor in despair, and asks what the hell kind of body this is. Also real quick, since he's no longer the sword, I'll be calling him Ian, which is Adrian's nickname. But he says that if only he had his original body, he could easily fix a constitution like this by forcefully forcing mana into it. There's a knock on the door, and a woman says that she's sorry for her intrusion, but this is a restorative medicine sent specially by the queen. It may taste bitter, but it'll be very good for his body, and he should consider Her Majesty's feeling. She also looks very nervous, because she hopes that he doesn't throw the bowl like last time. But Ian can tell that it actually contains mana. He quickly grabs it, and chugs it. She just stands there surprised, and he puts it back on the tray, asking if she's satisfied now, telling her to go. She bows her head, saying yes. And Ian says that he'll try it one more time. As he starts to swirl the mana around his chest, he says fortunately it's effective. The amount is still insufficient, and it's small enough to scatter after just a day, but it's better than nothing. He then chases after her before she gets too far, and calls out to her, which surprises her, but he asks if she has any more of that. A few days later, we see even more mana gathering in his hand, and he starts to laugh, saying this is good enough, and he can finally create a mana heart. He says he's done this countless times before, and he can make something like a mana heart with his eyes closed. But then he has a sharp pain in his chest, and he starts grabbing it, saying that this shit hurts, and come to think of it, every single time he's helped someone in the past make one, they always complain about how bad it hurt, and their chest felt like it was going to explode. He says that he actually didn't know that it was supposed to be this painful, but he grits his teeth, saying that he mustn't lose consciousness, because if he passes out now, he'll suffer from mana backflow, which could kill him. He resolves himself, and starts focusing everything he can, as he's trying to seize the clumps of mana that are trying to run wild, because there's no need to rush, he has to follow the path that flows along the heart to the right, and slowly let the new heart permeate. Slowly the pain subsides, and he's left with a moment of post-nut clarity, and when he opens his eyes, he says it's actually there. This time, it is not a mana heart made for someone else, but one made for him, and him alone. He gets excited, saying it's complete, and that he's actually made one now. A status window then appears, and he's confused, after it tells him that a mana heart has been created. He says that it is identical to the status messages he used to send to his masters when he was a sword, but why is it appearing now? It then says that it's restoring connection to the origin, and he starts getting spammed with status window after status window, saying that most of his authorities are unavailable, but he can at least use judgment, as well as third eye, and third ear, though very limited, but he'll probably get more back later. He looks out the window, and starts to use third eye, as he can see even the small leaves on a tree in pretty good detail. But it's not just that, as he can hear people outside in the other room, and they happen to be talking about his personality, but I'm sure the gossip is just normal. The backlash causes his head to hurt, because he has actually used up all of his mana, and it terminates the use of his authorities because of that. He says he understands that this is what the extremely limited meant on the status window, and detecting everything in all directions without a single blind spot was something that he possessed as a sword since he had the absolute senses, but now that's gone. For now, by squeezing out a rat's tail worth of magic power, he can only eavesdrop on sounds outside the door, or see things a bit better, but there should be some changes once he expands his mana pool first. His stomach then starts growling, and he says that he's low-key hungry. Somebody hears him outside, saying that they'll bring him some food at once, and he says he needs to focus on adapting to his human body. Later, his mother comes back, and she looks super excited, saying that she can't believe that he finished every drop of medicine that she sent to him, and that he must now finally understand how to treasure his own body. A man then enters the room, and she asks Ian if he recognizes who he is. Ian says that he doesn't, and the man says that it seems like he really lost his memory. She tells him that he has to help her child, and it turns out it's her brother. Ian says he was wondering who it was, and the queen says that it's his one and only nephew. Her brother says that she's speaking as if he lost something important, as it wasn't exactly a good past anyways. Ian can tell that the guy doesn't like him. His uncle says that he'll make one thing clear: all they can do for him is help remove a bit of that flab, and he can't provide anything beyond that, so she should abandon any useless expectations. She says even that much is more than enough, and he tells her not to forget that sentiment. Ian is just confused as his uncle starts staring at him. He later throws him straight into the training grounds, saying that from now on, eating, drinking, and breathing is something that he must receive permission for. If he expects to be treated like a prince to give up now. But if he tries his best, who knows, he might change his mind, and teach him a shred of their family's secret swordsmanship. Ian says this is ridiculous. To the instructor who taught the undefeated knight, and the master of the founding king who built this country, why is he the one being trained now? His uncle says that seeing how his fat's trembling, he must be resentful. Ian says he'd like to make a bet with him. Within half a year, he will make him acknowledge him, because he is tired of that arrogant look in his eyes, and if he fails, he will do whatever he says. However, if he succeeds, he must grant him a wish. His uncle laughs, saying that's interesting, and he agrees, saying that he should at least have some entertainment from this. Ian says that he talks some big shit, but his body is genuinely awful. He starts to put some mana into his feet, saying that he needs to make sure he focuses on burning the fat all over his body. His uncle instantly grabs his arm, asking him if he's actually done what he thinks he has. As he continues by checking his body, he sees the mana heart, asking if he actually created one. Ian laughs, saying that he actually succeeded in doing it a while ago, wondering if he regrets making the bet. But his uncle asks instead what the hell he thinks he was doing by creating a mana heart. But scratch that, where on earth did he learn the method in forging a mana heart? Because looking at it, it seems that he doesn't even know what he did wrong, and he tells him that a mana heart is actually a crude technique that only low-level mercenaries learn. Ian's confused, asking what the hell he's talking about, and he starts screaming. Meta got updated while bro was asleep. Sometime later, Ian says that it really is the end of an era. After he was told that it was a low-level technique, he asks what he meant, and his uncle says it would be faster to show him himself. As he looks down at his hand, we see the mana forming a ring, and Ian wonders if the ring is the new meta. His uncle then swings his hand straight towards Ian, and disperses his own mana. He says that mana chains have the property of shattering the sword energy of a mana heart. Furthermore, It is much easier, and more stable than a mana heart. Even the Eli family, who stubbornly stuck to mana hearts, fell into complete ruin 100 years ago, and now no one tries to use one anymore. Ian says that the times really have changed, because everyone is using mana chains. Mages use circles, and knights weave chains to gather mana. A knight stage is divided by the number of woven chains. A single chain, double chain, triple chain, and so on all the way up to penta chain. Ian says he supposes it's not just completely nonsensical garbage. He's tapping the book saying that the name is actually familiar, but he doesn't know where he heard the name Ortingen before, until it clicks. He says a very long time ago, a man wielded him, and his name was Ernest Ortingen. He says he has come to see if there is someone more worthy than him to have the title of Sword Saint. Ian says he was using strange arts that would need the swordsmanship for magic, and no wonder the name sounded familiar, and he wonders what happened to that guy in the end. Sometime later, out on the training ground while Ian is stretching, his uncle arrives asking if he read the book he gave him, and that he must have grasped the situation by now of just how foolish a choice he had made. Ian says still, he doesn't feel like he made a mistake in this slightest, to be honest. His uncle gets annoyed, and asks if he doesn't want to admit it, or if he still hasn't grasped the situation. Ian tells him that not all mana hearts are the same. The phrase difference in class is surely something he has heard of. His uncle says he wondered what nonsense he was spouting, and there are occasionally those like him among the mercenaries who delude themselves into thinking they are some hero from centuries ago, and he wonders if he knows what happened to all of them, as they all fell away unable to surpass even the 2 chain knights. And if he is different from them, he should try defeating a double chain knight, and then he will become his guardian as his mother wishes. Ian asks if having his uncle as his guardian is a good thing for him, because he is not really sure. The air gets very tense, and his uncle asks if he is really questioning his qualification as a guardian, because he is a count of the kingdom, and commander of the Northern Army. He is master of the Black Lancers, and one of the 5 silver lions who serve his majesty. As he starts to release his aura, it shatters some of the ground around him, and he explains that he is a quad chain knight. And we finally learn that his name is Vale Balorhand. He asks Ian if he thinks that's sufficient qualification, and the aura alone is causing him to get cuts all over his body. The royal knights all draw their blades in unison, pointing them directly at Vale, telling him to stand down. He laughs, but so does Ian, because Ian doesn't want him to go back on his word later. We see him gassed out, laying on the floor, and his uncle says that's enough for today. He finally sits down, but he struggles to even sit properly, as he is shaking severely. His uncle really has no hopes for him, thinking that he couldn't even beat a single chain if he wanted to. As he's making his way down the hallway, he opens a door, and the royal physician says that he's been waiting for him. Ian asks what he's doing here, and the physician says that he's humbled that he remembers him. But Ian asks once more what he's doing here, and he says that the queen ordered healing magic for him. And he goes to cast it, but Ian says no, and kicks him out, saying that he doesn't need it. One of the knights is confused, and Ian says that if he took the magic, it would mean the hell he went through today was just a waste. The knight looks surprised by this. Still, one of his brothers enters, asking if he's there. He smiles, looking down at him, but Ian continues eating, because he doesn't know who the dude is. He wonders what his deal is, until the knight says that's the third prince. The third prince says that he heard he had an accident, but he looks better than he expected, and it's a shame that he's okay. He asks what he's trying to say, or if he came to pick a fight. If that's the case, it's sad that a prince doesn't have anything better to do. His brother gets annoyed, because the guy talking shit to him is someone who stabbed himself. His brother says he heard an interesting piece of news, and he heard about the bet he made with Count Balorhand, something about him dueling a double chain knight. He laughs, saying that if that's all he's looking for, then he could be the one to be his opponent. A little later, Ian asks what that dude's deal was, and why all of the descendants of his comrade act like this. The knight with him says that the third Prince Gillian has been renowned for his talent and swordsmanship since childhood. Ian's surprised, and the knight tells him that he wove 2 rings together at just 14, so he is exceptionally talented. One of the maids then apologizes for interrupting, but shows a whole stack of letters that are for him. He wonders what they're for, and why there are so many, when nobody cared about this body beforehand. But as he starts reading them, letter after letter, he realizes that they are all asking the same thing. They're requesting a duel, since they know he's having trouble finding someone to spar, but he knows they just want a chance to legally beat him up. Ian says it looks like he's become an easy target, and he crumples one of the papers, telling the maid to come over here, and go find the people who sent these letters, and write down all of their names. Sometime later, in the training grounds, a wooden sword gets thrown onto the floor, and Ian wonders what it's for. His uncle tells him to pick it up, as he needs to at least know a shred of swordsmanship, for the bet to stand, and he doesn't want to hear excuses that he lost because he wasn't even taught the basics. Ian says that he could have just handed it to him nicely, and that his personality is a drag. As he goes to pick up the sword, his muscle pains kick back in, and his entire body starts aching. His uncle is confused, and asks if he really didn't receive healing magic. Ian says that if he's a knight he should know as well that healing magic only restores muscles to their original state, it doesn't help them grow. His uncle is surprised, but says that he's right, and walks away saying that's fine, as it wasn't what he intended to talk about today anyways, and he doesn't plan on showing this multiple times, so he should watch closely. It is the technique that the kingdom's knights learn to build their foundation, and the kingdom's training sword. As he slowly moves it down, he quickly picks up the pace, as he starts to swing the sword all around, and it looks like it flows together super well, as every single move has a follow-up that seems to be carrying its momentum. He continues swinging until he tightens the grip on the blade, before swinging once more in front of him. It sends out pressure throughout the entire training grounds. Ian stands there surprised, and asks if that was the sword style that the knights here learned to build their foundation. His uncle looks a bit annoyed, saying that it may lack sharpness, since it is a faithful to the basics, there is no better style for learning it. Considering his talent, it might be too much for even him. Ian starts laughing, and his uncle is confused. Ian says no matter how much time has passed, the great swordsmanship that beheaded the mad dragon is being treated like some trivial training technique. His uncle says of course this alone would be insufficient to win the bet, and after mastering the basics he can beg his mother to hire a different teacher, but Ian says there is no need, as he will not learn any other swordsmanship, as this is more than enough. His uncle tells him to do as he pleases, and he tightens the grip on his blade frustrated, and practices with some downward swings. He says the fact that the current Dragon Slayer style is treated as a training sword technique, but there is something he hates to admit, it is probably a natural phenomenon, because that Dragon Slayer sword lacks the will to slay dragons, which is what carried it previously. And those who threw away the mana heart, and forgot how to imbue will into the sword could not possibly have the eyes to recognize the true value of the Dragon Slayer. He swings down once more, but his uncle blocks it this time, and Ian looks over confused. His uncle says that power doesn't go into it just because he tenses his arms, asking if he has already forgotten what he showed him. He taps his stomach, and his legs, saying that he needs to use them together. He must channel strength correctly through his whole body to wield the sword. Ian says that's right, even though the current him is just a weak body that's clumsy at mimicking a fake Dragon Slayer style, he will prove that the Dragon Slayer style isn't some old junk to be thrown away. It's thrown away like some worn out shoes. Day after day he continued his training, and even after a whole week had passed, it didn't stop there, as they just kept piling up until a whole month went by. A status window appears, saying that he has succeeded in changing his constitution after arduous training, and his trait morbid obesity has been changed to general obesity. His metabolism becomes more active due to this, and he has become somewhat accustomed to using his body through repetitive training. His clumsy trait has also disappeared, and the effect of exercise is now going to increase significantly. This just fuels him even more, and now his constitution has changed after consistently accumulating mana. His mana sensitivity disorder has disappeared, and mana sensitivity has been created. He says he swings the sword more naturally than it was a month ago, and we hear a voice telling him to stop, but he doesn't hear it. He continues swinging, saying that he's stronger than yesterday, and it's low-key addicting, and he says that every second that passes by is making him feel more, better. His uncle then yells, after breaking his sword, asking if he didn't hear him telling him to stop. After his wooden sword falls onto the ground, he stands there confused, and we see him, and even the wooden sword covered in blood, as there's also a pool beneath him. Ian asks his uncle what's wrong, and then he looks over, seeing that the training dummy is on fire, and smoking, as it seems to have been struck by lightning, and he can't believe that he was in such a trance he didn't even notice this. His uncle calls him stupid, saying that he can't believe he's training on a day like this, if that were a real sword he wouldn't have escaped unscathed. Ian looks down at his hands, seeing them completely ripped apart, but the status window says he is completely awakened from a state of extreme concentration, but the body still remembers that sensation, and the trait hyperfocus has been created. Ian laughs, because while it could have been bad, it turned out really good. Though he's not too sure, since if he does it again he might get struck by lightning, and die this time. He passes out, and his uncle catches him, and he looks down at him with a little bit of respect though, and calls him foolish. A little later, Ian wakes up asking if he lost consciousness. He says he didn't know the limits of the body that he's in, and as a sword he had already achieved every accomplishment possible. He raised the nameless war hero, a swordsmaster, the mercenary king, and the founder of the kingdom. He led multiple wars to victory, elevating the level of body and soul. He guided the path of heroes. He was a wise advisor and an excellent teacher, but an existence that was always merely a third party. Looking down at his scarred hands, he explained that this was the reason he had wielded the sword until he was in that condition, intoxicated by the feeling of claiming all his sweat, effort, and hard work as his own. At this rate, his weak body will break down at no time, and he needs to balance the body and the mind. He says it's been over a month since he formed his mana heart, and he gathered quite a bit of mana since then, so he should be able to move on to the next stage soon. As he starts accumulating his mana, the status window appears, saying that through consistent effort he has gathered mana to a certain level, and now he can withstand a little more. As his mana heart starts to absorb all of the mana nearby, it actually gets expanded, and his body is able to withstand yet a little more mana. His body constitution as well has changed due to the expanded mana heart. As we see it strengthening his muscles and bones, when he opens his eyes again, he looks down saying that it's actually done. With this constitution upgrade, he can't wait to see how much better it feels to swing a sword, as he grabs onto a real sword this time, and not the practice one. The status window appears saying that he has reached the rank of sword learner, and he can now use the most basic level of aura. As he imbues it onto his blade, he says with this he can handle the basics. His uncle tells him that rumors are widespread within the kingdom, and Ian asks what he's talking about. His uncle says that it's about the bet that they made, and thanks to that even he has become annoyed, and that it would be better to just find a dual opponent quickly. Ian says that if he just needs to find an opponent, then he already has decided who it will be. Of course it's Jillian, and he says more importantly, it will be hard for him to face a double chain right away, so he wants to duel some single chain guys first. His uncle says that's his choice, and we finally learn that the knight with him is named Carl. Ian asks him if he prepared what he talked to him about, and Carl says yes, he has organized it as he requested. This is the list of those who sent duel requests to him, however he wants to know if he intends to have practiced duels with them all. Ian asks if it's bad if he does, and Carl reminds him that most of these people hold a grudge against him, and they might try to harm him under the guise of a duel. Ian says he knows that, and that is why his uncle must be the referee for them. He's not asking for anything grand, just to stop anyone from dying during the duel, and surely he can grant him a favor of that size. A few days later, the day of the first duel, we see a man arriving at the gates, and he says this is the first prince's palace, and he knows the scoundrel lives here. We also learn that his name is Taylor Tailheim, and he is the second son of an ordinary baron family. A few years ago, the real Ian laughed at him, making fun of him, and his father, because they were from the countryside, and because they were excited just because he came to a royal banquet. That's his brother, and his father, my bad twin. But anyways, it made his family's honor crumble to the ground, and his father and brother became the laughing stock of the nobles even to this day, and he holds a severe grudge against Adrian, and today he will make sure he pays dearly for that. Taylor makes his way to the training ground, saying that he offers his greetings to him, and introduces himself, saying that he is a single-chain apprentice knight, and practitioner of House Tailheim swordsmanship. Ian asks why he's being so formal for a practice match that's not even a formal duel. But also he asks Carl if he's even a knight, since he looks incredibly weak. Taylor says that he's just as arrogant and rude as the rumors make him out to be, and he's unaware of his place, and lacks common sense. His uncle says that's enough, and he understands how Taylor feels, but the duel hasn't even started yet, and he should retract his spirit. Taylor's eyes start to light up, since he recognizes him, and says that's an incredible honor to meet him. Ian's uncle says it's nice to meet him too, and Ian says that somebody might think his uncle is the prince instead. His uncle tells him that he should have behaved himself better in the past, and Ian says that he's always bringing it up anytime he can. His uncle tells them both to take their positions, as the duel will now begin. They have a stare down, and Taylor begins to release his aura, showing off his single chain. He tells Ian that he needs to prepare himself, as he's not going to go easy on him. He starts to charge in. He leaps off the ground, soaring into the air, and he goes to swing down, and Ian tells him that he has too many wasted movements, and blocks the attack effortlessly. Taylor is surprised, and recognizes the fact that he's using a mana heart, but it causes Taylor to distance himself away from him. Ian says that maybe it's because it only has one ring, it only feels a little tingly. There's a sound coming from his sword now, and Taylor looks surprised, as do Carl, and the other knights. Even his uncle does, because it's called sword resonance. Taylor says that he refuses to believe that he's capable of such a thing, and out of pure anger he charges straight in at him. Ian notices this, and blocks the attack, but it caught him off guard a little bit, as he's being pushed on the defensive, permanently having to create distance. He starts to imbue his blade with aura once more, and swings back, this time causing Taylor to distance himself, and they are back to a neutral position. Ian says that mana rings are meant to be incompatible with the mana heart, and that saying is indeed correct. He feels like he could experience mana backflow at any moment, just from clashing swords. However, he can tell Taylor is having a hard time too. He calls out to him, saying that he needs to cool his head down a little bit, and closes his eyes, focusing on purely his senses, as he feels himself floating into his own consciousness. He stretches his hand out saying to awaken, whether it's the demon sword, or the holy sword, or countless other names, part of his soul is still here. The part of him that has killed the mad dragon appears, a status window appears, saying that the mana heart has accepted a colossal will, and that the color is now overlaid upon the colorless mana heart he currently possesses, and that the dormant will to slay dragons will be awakened. This is the memory of his life as a sword, or at least the most recent activity when he was the sword. It holds the essence of the heart crafted to slay dragons. As the status window confirms this, the Dragon Slayer heart has been activated, and we see his mana heart now has a purplish red color rather than blue. His eyes also start to look a little red. He says this was forged for the sake of slaying dragons, and this is the true power of the dragon slaying sword. The status window says that the energy flowing from the Dragon Slayer's heart has merged with the sword itself, and he starts to release the terrifying aura in the real world, to the point that Taylor is riddled with fear, asking what the hell this is. His uncle realizes this is bad too, and screams telling him to stop, as Ian runs in to close the gap. His uncle realizes that the sword is dangerous, and we get a flashback to before the duel. Ian told his uncle that he has a favor to ask. If it looks like he's about to kill his opponent, which is exactly what's happening now, and he wanted his uncle to stop him. As he begins charging into the middle of their fight, he swings, sending Ian flying backwards into the wall, shattering it. And it was powerful because he put some aura into it. As Ian lays there in the wall looking like Yamcha, the royal guards all point their blades at him, asking him what the hell he has done, and depending on the circumstances he could be charged with regicide, but Ian tells them all to stand back because he asked him to do it. He did ask him though, but he never said to knock him out, as he falls unconscious immediately after saying that. When he wakes back up, the first thing he does is check his mana heart. He says that he thought it was actually going to crack. His uncle's power is definitely different from single chain nobodies, and he took a direct hit from that. Fortunately, there doesn't seem to be any lasting side effects. But still, he's glad it worked out in the end, and he won the duel after all. His uncle asks what he's smiling about, and Ian just looks confused, asking what brings him all the way here. His uncle says he wants to know what on earth he did, as that was the unrighteous sword, and he never taught him that style. Ian says that he was merely faithful to the essence of the sword. His uncle thinks about it, saying that talking about the essence of the sword when he's never even seen real combat, that means the essence of the sword as he conceives it is killing intent. While it's flagrant and uncomfortable, it is also a truth. Ian says that's unexpected. He thought he would lecture him about how the path of the sword is the perfection of the sword itself, or something, and drone out a long rant. His uncle laughs, saying that he's a soldier, not a knight, and he is one who walks the path of victory rather than the path of righteousness. Ian's surprised by this, but his uncle says however his sword goes too far. If his killing intent is excessive, he will fail to distinguish friend from foe. Ian asks if that's why he's kicking up all this fuss, if he's doing this to fix it. His uncle says he will watch him, and see if he is consumed by his inner demon or not. And after 3 whole days of practice, Taylor puts his blade into the ground, and Ian calls out to him, saying that he did great over the last 3 days. He had to block a sword with uncontrolled killing intent for 3 whole days, so he really did go through a lot. But he says it's a shame, he definitely would have felt better if he could have at least kicked his ass once, but he couldn't. Taylor goes to say that he's right, but Ian tells the maid to bring something forward. He sees a chest, and then Taylor asks what this is. Ian says he heard he did some terrible things to his family in the past, and he doesn't know if this will make up for it or not, but he should take this to his father. It's not much, just some gold, and a letter. He tells him to go home, and travel safely. He has no obligation to fix the messes the scoundrel made, but if he makes someone work, he should definitely pay the price. But his practice duel became a hot topic in the kingdom. People at first were talking about how he's just way too arrogant, and that the first prince will surely pay for his past misdeeds, and get humiliated. But after waiting for days, The news people expected did not come. When people asked Taylor how the duels went, it wasn't just him, but it turns out a lot of other people who dueled with Ian had the same reaction. They said there was a misunderstanding, and he's not as bad as the rumors made him out to be, and that they both did their best in the duels, and nothing more. There weren't even threats, and they both gave it a sincere try. Everybody else said the royal family must have silenced them. When Ian finally heard the news himself, he hit a crate, asking why the hell he would silence them. They just kept their mouths shut because they were embarrassed they lost to him, and that these nobles have nothing better to do than be unproductive with their time. His uncle says he's one to talk, and Ian turns, looking at his latest victim, and tells him that when he goes out he needs to make sure to spread the results of the duel too. He says he'll do his best, and Ian says with this the rumor should die down now. But later his maid tells him the truth, and he looks surprised. She says there is a rumor that he has threatened them to fabricate the duel results. Ian gets pissed, but says he's going to forget it, and focus on his training. He starts swinging his sword, trying to not think about it whatsoever. As he swings forward, trying to perfect his swordsmanship, he starts to chain the movements together and he flows it into the final bit of it. But of course he can't help but think about the duels. And he asks Carl how many opponents are left. Carl says the one coming today is actually the last one. And Ian sighs, saying that apprentice knights aren't enough for him anymore. Carl says that's good news, because the last one is a knight who has properly learned the sword. Someone not satisfied with merely polishing their family's sword arts, but a talent who joined a knighthood to train. Ian says this is good, as we learn that they are a probation knight of the Iron Lion Knights. Their name is Arwen Kigayan. Arwen Kigayan turns out to be a woman. As some of the men spot her, they confirm it's her based on the emblem of her armor. She has the nickname of Flower of the Cliff, and Thorny Rose. She's broken the hearts of many men. They say she's definitely pretty. For a woman like that to come here on her own means the prince has quite the ability. She overhears this, and looks annoyed. But the soldiers say that it would be truly laughable if the prince gets humiliated by that woman. We learn that the Iron Lion Knights are renowned as one of the kingdom's top orders in both fame and skill. The probation knight of this order, Arwen Kigayan, is a promising talent whose official membership has already been confirmed. Ian asks why such a genius would be coming to duel with him. Carl says there was a slight misunderstanding between them in the past. Ian says misunderstanding my ass, knowing him he probably picked a fight with her. Ian asks one of the maids what he did back then. She looks a bit dejected to say, but tells him that it's because he actually harassed her. Ian looks surprised by this, and says that he can't believe this crazy bastard would do that. We get a flashback to some type of event, and he puts his hand on her shoulder saying that she's pretty just like the rumors say, and if she wishes she could become his personal maid. She slapped his hand off of her, saying that the knights are not his private property. Then he started calling her ugly. Ian says that after hearing about this it sounds like the twisted courtship of an incel, because there's no way anyone would look at her and call her ugly to begin with. She tells him it's been a long time, and he hasn't changed a bit. He says that he wouldn't say that, as he's changed a lot to the point where the person inside is literally completely different. She still looks annoyed at him, and he says that this is all his karma. The maid then greets his uncle. His uncle recognizes Arwen. She greets him as a probation knight of the Iron Lion Knights, and he tells her to be careful because the prince's sword is quite vicious. Ian asks where he sold off his neutrality as an observer, but his uncle ignores it, saying that both of them should get ready to take their positions, because from now on the duel shall begin. She's the first to start as she crouches down into a sprinting stance. Ian says he can't wait to see the skill of the prospect knight, and she charges forward drawing her blade in an instant, coating it with aura. Ian says that the movement is quite nice, and he blocks the first attack, but the backflow starts to cause him to spit up blood. She can tell he's struggling, and then pushes forward causing him to distance himself, but she doesn't stop there, as she continues chasing him, making him move further and further backwards as he's having to continuously backpedal. He says that he's being dragged around at this rate, and this won't do. She begins to leap directly towards him, and he starts to use the Dragon Slayer's heart, which surprises her because he blocks the attack, and it's surprising enough that it makes her hand ring a bit, and she distances herself. She starts panting saying that sword is actually dangerous. Ian says that not all rings are the same, and she's definitely on a different level from everybody else he's fought. He starts to use judgment, and we learn that she's 19. Her swordsmanship aptitude is A, but she also has B in archery, combat techniques, and mana sensitivity. While she's strong, her traits say that she's competitive, and strong on the outside, but soft on the inside, and pure-hearted. He says the fact that he can see this with his limited authority, as he spits out some blood, means that she is either weaker than him, or of similar strength. So he might actually be able to win this duel as well, as they both get ready for the next charge. They both dash straight towards one another, and Ian says it's time for the real fight to start now. After a bit of dueling we see them both panting as the sun begins to set, as they've been dueling for a while. His uncle swings his sword downward saying that's enough, and they should stop for today, as they will continue the match tomorrow. We see Ian's body shaking, and he says that he was just about to finish it. But of course Arwen is shaking too, and she says that she was about to do the same. They start barking at each other asking the other if they want to keep going. And his uncle screams saying that's enough, and it's already too late. Both of them get treated immediately. As they are each being healed, Ian looks over at her, but she's also glaring back at him. Then they turn their backs to one another, and walk away, because neither one wants to lose to the other. Sometime later we see them yet again standing in the training grounds, and we learn that this is the third day of them dueling without a winner being settled. The knights are saying that they're actually surprised, as they've heard plenty about Arwen's skills, but the first prince's skills are equally as impressive, and they hope they can finally get a result today. Ian tells Arwen that before they go another round he has something he needs to tell her. She asks if he's really trying to apologize now, since she will not accept it. He says that he sees that she intends to reclaim her wounded pride with her own power, and that's an admirable thought, but it's not what he's going to say. Since they're fighting this fiercely he wants there to be a prize, and the loser should grant one wish for the winner. If told to kneel they kneel, and if told to bow down, and apologize they do it. She seems a little taken aback, and even the knights are telling him that as a member of the royal family he needs to take back that statement. Ian says the outsiders should stay out of it. He asks her what she thinks. She says that although she is but a mere apprentice, she's also a member of the knights loyal to the royal family, and she could not dare commit such disrespect against him. However, if it is within what he permits, she supposes she may be entitled to receive the prize of the bet. He tells her that's some good thinking. But he doesn't want her to go back on her word later. As they charge into one another they start trading blow for blow, but neither side seems to be having a clear advantage over the other. Ian spots a moment that he capitalizes on as he swings downward using the Dragon Slayer's heart, and she barely blocks it in time. She says that was fast, but she can tell that something's changed, because he wasn't this fast just yesterday. She wonders if this means perhaps he was hiding his true strength. Opposite of their first encounter he's on the complete offense this time. With every single attack she's getting pressed, there are some she can't even block. We see her dodge one of them, but it still grazes past her, cutting her. Until they're standing across from one another, and he sees that she's visibly tired because she's panting. Ian charges in closing the gap, raising his blade, and he goes swinging straight towards her. She's barely fast enough to match his swing, but we hear a loud sound as her sword gets sent flying through the air. She drops to her knees after having her blade broken. And the knights are all surprised, even his uncle is. She herself says this can't be possible, and he tells her that he won the bet. And he points his blade at her saying that now it's time for them to fulfill their obligations. And he tells her that he wants her, and she starts to look furious. That shit was so cringe to everybody watching, that it starts to explain Carl's background. Contrary to the job of being by the notorious first prince's side, it wasn't that difficult. In their first meeting he went by pretty chilly, and Adrian says that he'll be counting on him, and Carl just says that he seemed a bit arrogant, but he didn't throw violent tantrums at the drop of a hat like the rumor suggested. Rather it was completely the opposite of everything that he had heard, to the point where he would watch him training at every hour of the day that he could, even during the rain. He was there when the lightning struck the training post, and Carl yells telling him to watch out, but even though the lightning struck the training post he could tell that he was so concentrated that it didn't even faze him, and Carl instinctively knew that he would become a great man in the future. At least that's what he used to think, but now after hearing this shit he, and everybody else realize that he's nothing but a pig. Arwen stands up asking if that's truly what he desires, and he says of course, as she is now she is merely an ordinary apprentice knight who cannot even defeat a scoundrel prince. So what he wants is the potential, and future of the knight named Arwen Kigayan. He needs a knight who follows him, not a knight who guards him through royal decree, but one who belongs only to him. And from what he sees she has quite the talent for it, therefore he wants her to become his knight. She looks genuinely surprised by this, and she explains that she became the knight she's always dreamed of becoming, but no one ever once treated her as a knight. So she worked twice as hard as everybody else, and defeated every fellow apprentice member that she possibly could. And even after showing such a result she could not become a knight in everybody else's eyes, as they just saw her as a pretty woman, and nothing more. but for the first time in her life somebody is finally seeing her as what she wanted him to, and he said that he saw the potential and future she held as one too. She wonders if he's even sincere, and says that she wants him to promise one thing. He needs to treat her not as a woman, but as a knight, and if he does that she will follow him. They stare at each other for a couple seconds, and he tells her that he'll make that promise. She then widens her stance, before kneeling in front of him, and she formally swears her loyalty to him, and dedicates her sword, and the rest of her life to him. His uncle looks surprised, and Ian says that as a legitimate heir of Len Burke, in the name of Adrian Len Burke, he dubs the a knight, and he tells her to be brave, courteous, and above all to be loyal. Sometime later we see her training, and people are spectating, asking if it makes any sense that she would swear loyalty to that scoundrel, and that they have to nullify their bet somehow. One of the other dudes says that she already refused their help. People begin spreading rumors, asking if they have some kind of relationship, and maybe he can't openly take her as a mistress due to reputation, so he used a knight's oath as a cover. And they thought it was strange that she would even go duel him in the first place. Ian says this is crazy, wondering if he's some kind of villain, and he can't believe that everybody just sees him as complete scum. Carl thinks about it, and calls out to him saying that he has a question about what he said that day. Ian asks what he means, and he says a few days ago, on the day of the final duel, that he needed a knight who guards him not through royal decree. Ian asks if that upset him, saying that it's the truth. If royal decree came right now telling him to go somewhere else he would do so, and if he wants to he can make the oath later too. Carl asks if he would even accept it if he did make it, and Ian says he wouldn't. He doesn't want him, because there's no joy in raising him. Carl laughs asking if that's the truth, but Ian says that he's not joking, and he's serious. Later we see him reading a letter about how he's released from probation in order to attend the upcoming banquet hosted by the royal family. He wonders if he did something, because for them to lift their probation a month and a half early is surprising, even when this body's father looked at him saying that he never wanted to see him again. He didn't think this would happen, and he tells Carl that he has no idea what that man is thinking. Carl asks if he's not happy his probation is lifted, and Ian says he doesn't really care. Even if he leaves the palace, he has nowhere to go, and no one to meet, since he doesn't know anyone. The maid looks at a letter surprised, and says that she saw an invitation that arrived for him. He asks what it's for, and she hands it to him saying that this is the one. He opens it, and it is a social club for special young lords. She tells him that's his social gathering where he was a member. He's surprised asking if it's a weird place, and she says that to her, the refined taste of the young lords are incomprehensible. And he realizes that must be a gathering for booze, and chasing women. He says that he's going to forget about it, because he's too busy with training, so why would he go to such a useless gathering? But when he reads it he's surprised, because it mentions the Eli family, and it's written by someone named Bernardo from it. But the Eli family catches his interest, because it's a name he remembers. According to his uncle they were the family that insisted on the Mana heart until the very end, and eventually fell into ruin 100 years ago. He says that he's going to attend after all, and she says that she'll prepare his things, but looks disappointed. Of course he has different reasons, and he hopes the Eli family hasn't fallen from grace yet. A little later, Ian says that he spent 4 months of training since he possessed the fat little piggy prince's body. We see the tailor asking if the outfit is to his liking, as he did not miss a single word of his instructions. He made the color black, and the embellishments all minimal. The design is simple. He starts praising him for his dignity. Ian says that he certainly has lost a lot of weight. The tailor says that his measurements have decreased by more than half. Ian tells him that he'll leave the outfit for the palace banquet to him as well. The tailor says that he'll start working immediately, but Ian tells him to wait a little longer, as his measurements will change again by then. A few days after his probation was lifted, he's on his way to the social club for special young lords. Of course, Carl is with him. He's looking around while Ian is inside the carriage board. He says that a prince truly is an exhausting position, as the clothes, the carriage, and the guards have to be super strict. He looks over to the maid in the carriage, and asks her what's the deal with the scar on her neck. She says that it's from her incompetence, and it was something that he was right to reprimand her for. He says that he can't believe that it's another person that he was horrible to, and his body has more horror stories than he's ever heard in his life as a sword. He says that he's also seen this maid for months, yet he still doesn't know her name, and she's completely terrified of him. He asks her, and she looks surprised. She tells him that her name is Adalia Bayern. He says that Bayern is a name that he recognizes, and she says that it's a family that barely has its name listed on the noble registry. He says he didn't think he would hear it in a place like this. In the distant past, when not even cities existed, and let alone kingdoms, among the various races of the continent. It was an era where weak humans were naturally robbed and killed. There were those who put an end to the history of that miserable species at the end of the Great War. To the saviors who finally allowed humans to rise as the dominant species of the continent, there were 5 of them who were granted the epithet of the 5 electors. One of those 5 heroes was a woman who held him when he was Grühorn, and she asks if he's ever thought about it, what they will be doing after this war finally ends. As she jumps off the cliff that she's on, leaping straight towards a monster, it was the one who beheaded Ada, the king of giants, and ended the long era of exploitation. She was called the Iron-Blooded Sword Marquis Agnes Byrne. She begins laughing as monsters surround her on all sides, and her eyes begin glowing yellow, and she starts shit-talking them. It's so much shit-talk it's like a Call of Duty lobby. She drops slur after slur about the monsters, and it's so bad every single bar is censored out. It makes Grühorn sweating nervously, and he says just thinking about it dirties his ears, but for him to meet a descendant of that Byrne, he wonders what happened to make them turn out like this. Carl then knocks on the door, saying they have arrived. But he's confused since Ian looks awkward. Ian sighs and exits saying that was great timing. As he walks away he tells Adalia they will talk later, and both she and Carl are just confused. Carl got a double take it. A man then greets him. This is Bernardo, and he asks if he's been well all this time, and he can't express how happy he is to see him. Ian uses judgment on him, and says he can't believe he's a member of the Eli family since he looks like a thug, but what he sees in the status window surprises him as he tunes out Bernardo, and he starts to realize it was a good idea to come here. Bernardo asks what's wrong, and if his body is still feeling unwell. Ian laughs, saying it's just a good idea he came. And thanks to him today will be entertaining. Bernardo is confused, but after a bit of being inside everyone is having a blast, and it is of course just nobles trying to pick up chicks while drinking alcohol. Bernardo says it's weird, usually Ian would be shit-faced flirting with anyone he could, but even his aura is different now. Someone then sits beside Ian, and says that he heard a rumor that he plucked the flower of the Iron Lion, and the rumors are spreading everywhere. Ian stares at him, and other people in the room say they can't believe that they were late, as they had their eyes on her too. And Bro says that she was beautiful enough that just seeing her in armor made him really wonder what it was like underneath, and he'd love to rip it off. Ian asks if he has any siblings at home, and the dude asks if he's forgotten already, since he is a younger brother. Ian says that's a relief, and the dude asks what is, before Ian hits him straight in the face, causing him to fly backwards onto the floor. It shatters the cup he was drinking too, and the other nobles all look shocked. Even Bernardo does. Ian says that it's a relief that his family line won't end with this, and he stomps on the dude's nuts. All we hear is a cracking sound, and everybody watches in horror, and Ian says from now on his younger brother is going to be the heir of his family. Ian picks the dude up, and hits him again, and everybody just watches, wondering if maybe they should try to stop it. He grabs the guy by the collar so he can't fall over, and the dude asks why the hell he's doing this. Ian tells him to listen well, as he can tolerate them thinking of him as a scoundrel, but he cannot tolerate them treating him like one. Everybody wonders what the hell he's talking about, and Ian says that it just means he needs to get hit some more. The guy flies backwards, and lands on the ground, and everybody else just stands there, not able to say anything. Bro's eyes roll to the back of his head. He then calls out for Bernardo, who drops to his knees, and Ian says that he told him earlier that it would be very entertaining today. Bernardo wonders why he's acting like this all of a sudden. Ian tells him to go, and summon the royal knights. Bernardo quickly runs out saying that he will obey his command, and everybody else just stands there frozen in fear. Ian turns around telling the women that they're free to leave. One of the dudes thinks about slipping out, and goes to walk away, but Ian says that he said only the women. If they want to leave then leave, but if they do they'll be leaving as a woman too. They recall him doing the ball bust 2000 earlier on Homeboy, and get scared. He walks forward saying that none of them even formally knelt before a prince, nor did they show any respect. They mocked him to his face, and even insulted his knight. He goes over to the door asking what charges can be applied in this case. Carl says that since they look down on royalty that constitutes insult to royalty, and everybody looks horrified. He continues saying that since they challenged the authority of the royal family then that could be considered treason too, and he just needs to give him the order about who they should force to their knees. Ian smiles before he says everybody here. Sometime later we see him standing before his father, who tells him that he caused quite a scene the moment his probation was lifted, as 14 noble children have been arrested for insult to royalty, and treason. And he tacked on every grand excuse he could find, asking if he even realizes what he did. His father says that since he invoked the authority of the royal family they must be punished severely, But with 14 families involved, they can't simply ignore the backlash. Ian predicts that he is worried about the backlash, saying that they are outcasts even within their own families. They are irredeemable trash that only tarnishes their family's reputation by keeping them around, and that he can just send a letter. His father asks to who, and Ian says that he keeps asking when he already knows. There are people who can handle the internal noise of each family better than anyone else. It's the brothers and sisters of these scoundrels that were arrested. He asks his father if he's wrong, but his father tells him to just leave. Ian says this is good, since his father had nothing to say. Later he's trying to calm down Adalia, telling her to be calm, as he's not going to hurt her, and she cries asking what exactly she did wrong. He realizes that she must be very scared of him, and he knows that she probably doesn't know about Agnes at all, even though she's also a member of the Bayern family. The history of glory was erased, and their peerless arts were cut off. Their great prestige, and their lofty pride have all vanished without a trace. Yet when he looks at her status window using judgment, he can see that her swordsmanship is S tier, her mana sensitivity is A tier. She has the traits of butcher, war maniac, fragile heart, caregiver, and slave mentality. And he asks what the hell is the deal with these traits. Butcher means she goes crazy when she sees blood. War maniac means she's obsessed with battle. Fragile heart means she also has a tender heart, and caregiver means she's skilled at taking care of others, and slave mentality means she has a dependent and passive personality. He says her talent is really good, but she doesn't have a single trait to control her madness, and he doesn't know if it's okay for him to unleash that upon the world yet. He thinks about it, and says that he might as well give it a try, since it is an S-ranked talent after all. There just happens to be a trait he can exploit, the slave mentality one. It's a trait where one feels grateful for the existence of a master they serve in their heart. He tells her to swear her loyalty to him. She's confused asking what he means, and he says that he is telling her to become his knight, and she should swear it right now. She drops to her knees saying that's not something she can handle. He says that she already mentioned her family was insignificant, and he'll take full responsibility for them. In return she must swear her loyalty to him, and serve him as her master. Since she can't control the madness herself, he'll be the one to take control of it for her. She asks if he will really take care of her family, and he says that he will. If she wishes, he will summon them to the capital so she can see them anytime. She gets excited, saying that she'll do as he says. She then says her oath of knighthood, and she'll devote herself to him for her entire life. He says this is good, and from now on she will obey his orders unconditionally, and he puts his hand on her head. We see her looking excited, but he doesn't know if this was the right choice or not. But of course this led to even more rumors about how he's been acting like a scoundrel again. Not only did he force a knight's oath of loyalty using underhanded methods, but he also summoned noble children, beat them, and threw them into prison. And now they say he's made a maid who's never even held a sword into a personal knight. And they all think it's obvious that he's trying to build a harem under the guise of personal knights. Ian says that he only took in one personal knight, yet from the moment he woke up everyone has something to say. His father told him that he was getting a headache trying to clean up the mess he's made. And yet he's here indulging in women. His uncle calls him pathetic, saying that it seems like he's given up on the bed entirely. And even his brother Jillian says that him appointing a maid as a knight is truly just like him. Ian asks why the rumors travel so fast. And one of the maids arrives, saying that the queen is here. And he starts to get annoyed, and his mother says that just when it seemed that he had turned over a new leaf, it seems he intends to return to his old ways. But actually this works out well, because once a spouse is chosen, and he settles down, he'll stop this wandering he's doing. He asks what she's talking about, and she tells him to just trust in his mother, as this time she'll find him a suitable spouse. She walks away, while he insists they're confused, saying that he doesn't even know anymore. But later, we see Adalia asking if she will also gain mana now. He says that she will. It's a very special kind of mana. As he starts to pass his manga on to her, he says that though the world has completely forgotten the sword Marquis, he has not forgotten a single thing. The forgotten footsteps she left behind, the sword that danced at her fingertips, and also how she used the mana heart herself, as it was special to Agnes alone. And with this, the status window tells him that Adalia has actually sensed mana, and since he successfully imprinted mana onto her, it has started to settle within her body. We see her eyes open widely, as a mana heart has been created for her. We see her eyes light up too, as she asks if this is what mana is like. He says that what she just performed is the method for forging a mana heart. From now on, she should practice it on her own whenever she has time. He then starts to stumble over onto the ground. She screams out to him, asking if he's alright. He says that for him to end up like this, just from creating one mana heart, is low-key sad. And that he's just a bit tired. She asks why he would go so far for someone as lowly as her, and he says that it's fine, and to just leave now. She sits there staring at him, and he asks why she's staring so much. She bows, saying that she will serve him with loyalty for the rest of her life, and he laughs, saying that she's already made that oath last time. She says yes a couple times, and after he leaves, he says that he's afraid that she might forget, because she's still just sitting there staring at him. A few days later, Carl tells him that regarding Bernardo, he is going to be a witness to the recent disturbance, and nobody can see him until the trial begins. Ian asks if he has to attend too. Carl tells him that royalty does not stand trial, and Ian says that's good news. But for them to make a trial out of this, they're blowing it out of proportion. He then asks Adalia how things are with her, and she asks what he means. He says that her mana heart should have been stabilized by now. She says that it has, and he says that's good news, because from today on she will be joining him in training. He then tells her to go change her clothes, and meet him at the training grounds, and also to put down the rags, and she's a knight now, and not a maid. At the training ground, Ian's warming up, and his uncle asks what he thinks he's doing. He asks if he can't tell, he's just stretching his body. Then he says not that, he means why is that girl here, as we see her wearing armor running. He asks if he didn't hear the rumors, as he's making her a knight. His uncle asks if the title of a knight is so trivial to him. Considering the current situation, how can he act so reckless? Ian asks why he's being a busybody, as he's acting like a helicopter parent. If he hates it so much, why does he keep coming here? Adalia then runs over saying that she finished all 10 laps, and drops to her knees. His uncle turns away, and she says that she's sorry, and because of him everybody's looking at him differently. But he tells her not to worry about it, and hands her a practice sword. As today, he'll teach her the basic stance. He says first she should follow him exactly, and teaches her to utilize the basic stance by transitioning it into a swing. He tells her to give it a try, and she does her best to stay shoulder width just like he did. And then she turns, swinging, and it's extremely sharp for her first time ever swinging a sword. Even his uncle notices it. But Ian's just as surprised, because she copied it after seeing it just once. She asks if she did it correctly, but Ian's in disbelief, saying that if he lets his guard down she's gonna pass him in no time. And that the slave mentality trait means submission to the strong, and not respect towards the weak. He's already uneasy given how he tormented her in the past, and if she surpasses him now she might get her revenge, and kill him. He looks a bit uneasy, and his uncle says that he didn't think she would possess such a talent. Ian bumps his uncle asking what he thinks he's doing, as he shouldn't even dare covet her. His uncle laughs, asking what that child could possibly offer that child, as she's just a novice, and she's only held a sword for a few months, and he cannot handle her. And he reminds him that he's a quad-chain knight. Ian says that if it was the original Adrian he would have trembled, and backed down immediately. But he is not him. And he tells his uncle that if he cannot handle her, as he starts to pump his mana heart, he says that that means no one can. And he knows better than anyone who he is, as he has drank the blood of the giant king, the mad dragon, and countless other beings. As he is none other than Gruhorn. A status window appears, saying that a portion of the soul manifests in response to the user's will. And he starts to release a faint, and red aura while staring at his uncle. His uncle sweats a little bit, and Ian says that she is his, and he should not try touching what belongs to him. Ian says that he truly hates it when someone takes what is his. And his uncle just sits there, not saying a word. Ian continues glaring at him, as he starts to feel a weird sensation. He says that his sense of reality is fading. He's unable to feel vitality or life, filled only with a sensation of cold and darkness. And he wonders if this is an omen or not, because at this rate this weak body will be consumed by the soul of Gruhorn, and ripped apart until there's nothing left. But he manages to fight back, sealing it behind some kind of door. He says that's enough, as he closes it shut forcefully. He snaps out of his mental world. And his uncle says that a single ordinary knight can save the lives of 10 soldiers. But a single outstanding knight can save the lives of 100 soldiers, and that child might be able to save 1,000 or even more people. Ian wonders if maybe it's his conviction for the commander of the northern frontiers, great cause. But regardless, even if it was, he doesn't really care. His uncle tries once more, asking if he really doesn't care if she could save countless lives. And Adalia tells him that her body and heart already belong to His Highness, and she can't follow his words. He looks surprised, and Ian says that it was worth the effort of dragging his soul out, since slave mentality is bound to submit to a being of higher rank. He tells his uncle that he wants to know if he has anything left to teach him now, as the goal from the start was to help him lose weight. But if he wishes to keep visiting the palace, he should not interfere with his affairs from now on. His uncle says he understands. And even after that day his uncle continued to visit the palace without fail to watch over Adalia, even though he can't do anything, since nagging and interference have been forbidden. It is entertaining to watch his arrogant uncle squirm like this. Eventually once she swings the sword she feels a weird sensation, as it feels like her mana is coating the blade, and it starts to make a familiar sound. Ian and his uncle both recognize it as sword resonance, asking if she really learned it already. Ian claps saying this is great. But for her to be this fast, it means he might actually get overtaken. Ian's uncle begins shaking, and asks if he taught her the mana heart as well. Ian says yes, and asks if there's something wrong. His uncle gets pissed, asking if it was not enough for him alone to learn such a cheap trick. Ian glares at him, and tells him to get out. His uncle says there was a much better path, and there was potential there that he could not even imagine yet. He ruined it all. Ian tells Carl to escort him out, but his uncle says that he will leave on his own. As he does, Adalia asks what he meant by a cheap trick. And Ian explains that it's definitely not the case. She wonders why the Count is speaking like that then. And Ian says it's because he doesn't know, and the people of this era have completely forgotten what a real mana heart is like. If they hadn't, they wouldn't have discarded it like a pair of old shoes. But she'll find out soon enough the true power of it. Some time later we see a sword getting thrown into the ground, and Ian looks down at it, as his uncle is standing before him. Ian says that he thought he would never come back. His uncle tells him to prove it, as he will use only a single ring. If he pushes him back even half a step, he will acknowledge him. Ian picks up the sword, asking if the bet is still on about him granting a wish. His uncle says that if he wins, he will grant him one thing, whatever it may be, even if it's the family secret technique. Ian says that's not what he wants. But for now he'll agree. And he swings towards his uncle, saying it's time to fight. His uncle barely moves to dodge the attack, and says that aiming for the neck right at the start means that his sword is still as dangerous as ever. Ian does another follow-up, but of course his uncle dodges. Ian gets frustrated, and starts swinging all over, just trying to land any hit he can. But his uncle hasn't even moved his feet, just his body. His uncle gets tired of dodging, and raises his sword into the air before swinging down. Ian blocks it, but his uncle asks if this is all he has. Ian realizes that he can't win like this, and distances himself from him. His uncle asks if he's giving up. Ian says no. And while he finds him annoying, he needs to go ahead and admit to himself that his uncle is strong. And he's waiting for him to draw his mana to give him a taste of an even more miserable defeat. With a mana heart of just this level, it is certain he would lose as he intends. Ian asks his uncle if it's not strange. His uncle wonders what he means. And Ian says that 400 years ago countless mana heart knights achieved unbelievable feats. Yet just because one somewhat useful technique had appeared, all of the arts of those great knights are now treated as trash. And that seems to be what everybody thinks, that the mana chain is a much more powerful method of mana manipulation than the mana heart. His uncle tells him to get to the point. And Ian says that his thoughts are different. It was not the mana heart that was weak, but its users. Just because it's a mana heart doesn't mean they are all the same. And he asks his uncle if he's perhaps heard of the martial spirit hymn. His uncle says that this is a place to cross swords, not a place to run their mouths. Ian says that he thought he would say that. Since he also called the mana heart a crude technique learned only by lowly mercenaries. His uncle tells him he talks too much, asking if he's doing this to catch his breath. Ian says that's not the case. But he understands that the path of the knight he has walked comes with achievement. And he says that 100 victories are his pride, and his power. His uncle wonders what's going on, as the status window appears, saying that he sings of 100 victories won against 20 trainees dreaming of becoming knights. The achievements are engraved into Ian's heart. And the engraved achievements become a martial spirit hymn, as that skill has now been created. It starts to make his sword overflow with aura. And it is called the hymn of sparring, as it begins to dwell on the sword itself. Ian says that it is an ordinary, small achievement that he has done over the past half year. But we see it actually starting to take effect on his blade. And he says this is the true power of the mana heart. And he begins to smile. His uncle says no matter what he does, it'll be the same. As long as he possesses a mana heart, he cannot defeat the mana chain. Ian charges in though, not letting it distract him. And his uncle blocks the attack once more. Ian says it's true, the mana of the rings has the property of causing mana backflow through the mana heart. We see Ian enduring it, and his uncle smiles before swinging, sending him flying backwards, saying that he's quite good at enduring at least. But Ian says that that's not all there is to this him though. To obtain this, he sparred over 100 times, and most of the mana of the rings over 1,000 times, a power forged to deal with Knights of the Ring. And he starts to add to the hymn, saying while clashing 100 times, he endured 1,000 waves. As he swings forward, we see that his mana did not actually get dispersed, as it starts to recollect itself. Coating his body, this is the true power of the hymn of sparring. He points his blade at his uncle, and he says now it seems worth a try. Ian dashes forward, and his uncle blocks it once more. But it doesn't stop there, as he continues attack after attack. Though his uncle has not moved an inch, Ian starts to smile. He realizes that this is actually going to be doable. His uncle can't believe though that he lasted this long to begin with. He tightens the grip on his blade before inputting more mana into it, and swings at Ian. Ian slides backwards, but manages to catch himself, and recollects his aura once more. His uncle is confused asking how this is possible, and Ian says he already told him that not all mana hearts are the same. His uncle starts to get serious, calling him arrogant. He then widens his stance before swinging downwards. Though it looks like he takes a step here, I'm not sure. But it sends Ian flying backwards into the wall, exploding it. And his uncle says that he is going to stop playing around, as just enduring it until now is commendable enough, and he shall praise him. Ian says as expected a normal grade martial spirit hymn is insufficient. And he tells his uncle 400 years ago the knights made a grave mistake. They did not leave any enemies for their descendants. At first surely everything was passed down as it was. The sword techniques, the correct method of refining the heart, and the shining martial spirit hymn. But time gnawed away at those shining achievements, and eventually caused them to be forgotten. Tales about dragons never seen, and giant kings that were never heard of. They must have become legends at some point that everybody thought was absurd. Of course new martial spirit hymns would have been created. But at best a victory against 10 knights, or an achievement of overcoming 100 soldiers. At best a hymn built against humans alone. With grades that failed to become myth or hero, it could not withstand the new wind. Which is why they probably failed. Sadly with mana chain he would not be able to reach transcendence. His uncle asks if he's been drinking today, as he can't understand what he's been saying for a while now. Ian calls his uncle foolish, and arrogant, saying that all he needs to know is just how great a thing that he has truly lost. And if he does not know just how great of a skill this truly was, he's going to teach him firsthand, personally that which no treasured sword can cut. He's going to split a dragon's scales, and drink its hot blood. As he's now singing the hymn of true dragon slaying, it begins to echo throughout him. His current abilities cannot handle the greatness of the hymn though. As we see him starting to feel physically pained, as if he was breaking apart. The status window starts to emit parts of the hymn one after the other. And now he's singing only a single verse of the hymn, which is a quarter of a quarter. That is splitting the dragon's scales. His new deep dark red mana starts to coat his blade, and he charges forward towards his uncle, and swings. His uncle blocks it. But it starts to shatter through his wooden training sword, and the mana coating it. And his uncle says at this rate he'll be devoured. And that there's no time for him to keep using a single chain, as he starts to let that shit rip. There's a massive explosion as Ian flies out of the rubble. And his uncle's still standing there. Ian looks up at him, saying that he thought he would only use one ring. His uncle says even after using all four his sword was still unable to be saved, as it was broken. Ian starts to sit back up, and says that the mana from the heart is inferior to the mana from the ring. And that was an undeniable truth. But with this he tells his uncle that he is truly lost. And he looks like the realization is hard to take. Sometime later, Ian's having visions of the mad dragon, and his body as a sword being enveloped by its blood. He keeps screaming no, and to stop, before he jolts awake in bed. He grabs onto his chest, and instantly rolls over, as he starts coughing in pain. He tightens his grip on the bedsheet, and says that it's all because of this damn hymn. This is the price for forcefully drawing out the power of it. And since the hymn of true dragon slaying is a martial hymn graded at around myth, his body became a wreck because of it. But it was well worth the risk. Since it helped the first hymn that he willed himself. 100 victories are his pride, and his strength. During 100 duels he endured 1,000 waves. And he shall stand tall before even greater waves. All because he endured the myth level, the level of this one has risen now. And he looks really proud of it. He says this should be enough for the sparring with the third prince. And Adelia calls out to him, and starts crying, asking if he's finally awake. Apparently it was total chaos after he collapsed, and she's never seen the queen so angry before. Ian says that it serves them right. And Adalia says that his uncle left a message saying to notify him once he awakens. Ian tells her not to report it yet, as he's going to rest for a while. But it's also because he's not ready. If he doesn't properly recover his spirit, which was damaged by the excessive use of the hymn, he will pay a terrible price. Reality and memories of the past will mix into a chaotic mess. And at some point the boundary of reality will completely collapse, leading him to become nothing but a madman. He would endlessly reenact moments of his spirit within a severed world. To think he'd be trapped in the sword's memories again after finally becoming human, just the thought is making him shudder. He eventually tells Adalia about Agnes, and how she was a great swordswoman. And since she is a descendant of her, she should be able to inherit the hymn that she left behind. He tells her that she didn't think her ancestor would be such a great woman. And Ian says of course she'll need to grow much more than now to possess the grade befitting that hymn. But he has a question, asking how she feels about learning the sword. She looks a little taken aback by it, and says that if she could truly become a knight. But then she starts repeating herself, and she looks frustrated. He tells her that if she can't think of it, just to tell him later. She says he wonders what she's talking about. And she tells him that she will become his sword. He looks surprised, and says that some hymns of martial deeds begin with the sound of a charging trumpet. And some hymns of martial deeds start from the first step across a plain. And they have their stories beginning with a heartfelt oath. She says living for him for her entire life, and dedicating her everything to him is what she wishes. The status window tells him that she is dedicating the hymn of subordination, and it flies towards him, and he says this must be her own spirit hymn. Sometimes a martial hymn influences others as well. As a giant golden tree forms behind her, the status window says that a new martial spirit hymn has been created. It is normal grade, and it's the hymn of domination, as he was granted it. He looks surprised, and says that the hymn of subordination is a hymn dedicated to his master rather than a martial spirit hymn, and is an oath of submission that binds souls together. He says even if she has the slave mentality trait, to think a descendant of Agnes would weave a hymn of subordination. It turns out that he has received unexpected help. As long as he is the target of that hymn, Adalia's growth will work to his benefit as well. He thanks her, and she starts to shiver, and looks flustered. He says that he doesn't know yet in what direction that benefit will be. A few days later, Ian looks uncomfortable, while Carl and Adalia just look surprised. His mother asks if he's feeling any better, and he tells her it's fine. He says it's easier to deal with those who hate him, but someone who cherished the original owner of this body is still awkward to handle. She asks if maybe he resents his uncle, but tries to tell him that he didn't mean to harm him. Even if he has some bad feelings, hopefully he can shake them off. He tells her he doesn't have any. She asks why he wouldn't. He treated him so roughly, and nagged him at every turn. So saying that he has some bad feelings must be a lie. He says that he just really doesn't, since he already landed a blow on him that day. Since all of his pride and truths were denied, it must be hard for him to endure. What he planted in him that day was an inner demon of doubt. And if he has the ability he will leap further, and if he can't overcome it he will lose even that precious martial prowess of his. But he honestly doesn't care what happens after that. His mother says that his uncle has spent his whole life closer to the sword than to people, so he has a clumsy and rough side. But recently it seems he was quite proud of him. He even went so far as to persuade his father himself. Ian looks surprised by this, and his mother continues saying that it is thanks to him that his probation was lifted earlier than scheduled. But trouble arose as soon as it was lifted, and his uncle's position must have been quite difficult too. Ian wonders if this is why he has been so disapproving of him, but still he doesn't know why that man would do that for him. Sometime later we see an old scholar excited to see Ian, and his name is Niccolo Marchandale. Ian says he refuses, and Carl and Adalia wonder what's wrong, because he starts freaking out, flopping onto the floor, saying he doesn't want to study. Niccolo asks if one does not learn what differences there are between a human and a beast. Ian asks if he's calling him a beast right now, and Niccolo says that he has only just begun his studies, so he cannot call him a beast yet. Ian says he hasn't even started to stop playing word games with him. Despite how he looks he already knows everything he needs to, and that there's no need for him to learn anything more. Niccolo says that if he insists, then they'll do it like this. They will discuss a few topics with each other, and if his skills are truly as he claims he will no longer visit him either. Ian smiles, saying this sounds like lightweight. And eventually he slams his hand on the table, saying exactly that is why one must always watch their back, and it's human nature to walk all over you if you're too lenient. Niccolo says that he is absolutely correct, and hands him a book of the theory of the iron-blooded monarch, saying that he will find this interesting. It evaluates the relationship between ruler and subject as a kind of contract or transaction. The ruler receives military and economic support in exchange for protecting the subject. The subject seeks the ruler's protection and political stability in return for their loyalty. Ian says that he's making some sense, and as all relationships are supposed to be about give and take. They continue yapping each other's ears off until sunset. And Niccolo stacks his books, saying that if in that case he hopes they can really continue the rest of the discussion tomorrow. Ian looks really excited, saying sure, and he'll be waiting, and waves him off. Still excited until he realizes then that he just ended up taking a normal lesson. And that old man is really sly. After Niccolo leaves he thinks about it, saying that the first prince is really quite different from the rumors he has heard. It takes us to another day, as Ian's laying in his bed, saying that he's low-key bored, and that he might have been living too diligently. Since he's not training there's nothing to do, and his body's recovering too. Adelia knocks on the door, saying that his uncle is here to see him. And he says finally it's a guest for the first time in a while. He asks what they shall do, and he says to tell him to come in. Ian says it's been a few days since the last duel, and it's about time he visited. But it seems he hasn't overcome the inner demon he planted at all, because bro looks like he's on the verge of Sudoku. His uncle takes a second before telling him that he's sorry. Ian looks surprised, and his uncle says he broke the promise he made himself, and caused him great injury because of it. And he has no excuses. Of course the reason Ian had to rest wasn't because of his uncle's aura blade, but because he overused the hymn of the true dragon slaying. He realizes that his uncle must actually care for him after hearing what his mother said, and he starts weighing it on his conscience. His uncle then tells him to speak what he desires, and if he asks for his arm he'll give it, or even his eye. Ian asks what he's supposed to do with junk like that. And for a man who would have been a sword master in the old days, getting caught up in his inner demons like this is surprising. He sighs, saying that he'll be generous. And he'll state his first wish. He tells his uncle that he wants to go on an outing. His uncle says that since his probation has ended, he can go out anytime he wishes. Ian says that he doesn't want a one-day trip like that, he wants to go somewhere far, if possible, outside the capital. He says it will take some time to arrange the schedule, with the upcoming banquet going too far is impossible. Ian says that's fine, and his uncle says that he will contact him once the schedule is set. Ian says that he's looking forward to it. After he leaves, Carl just stares at him, and Ian asks what's wrong. Carl says it's just unexpected, he thought he would demand something much more unreasonable, since the Count broke his promise, and it is a rare opportunity to take advantage of that in many ways. Ian says it's just seeing that stubborn old man acting like that made him feel bad for him. Carl is surprised to the point that he starts laughing, and Ian says that he's looking a little too comfortable these days, wondering why he's laughing at him. Adelia then tells him to check this out, and when he looks over she says that the letter he was waiting for has finally arrived. She hands it to him, and it's Arwen saying she recently achieved a small accomplishment, and it seems that she will be able to visit him soon, and she hopes that he remains in good health until that day. Ian says it really is the right news at the right time. About 5 days later his uncle sent him the welcome news, and 2 days after that the day of the departure arrived. We see them all heading out of the capital, and Ian asks his uncle what territory they're stopping by, and if it was Ellen, or Eileen. His uncle asks if he can just sit still, but he can tell the kid's just excited, and says that he will explain if he sits back down. Ellen County is the royal court's greatest production site for weaponry. There are iron mines within the territory, supplying high-quality iron, and a guild of artists and smiths to refine it. It is no exaggeration to say that more than half of the weapons supplied to the royal family come from Ellen. Ian says that his cultivation has improved a lot, so it's about time he found a sword of his own. Originally he planned to just pick up a decent sword from the royal army to use. So Carl says that since it's a royal decree they cannot issue any weapons to him. He's shocked, but remembers that the fat little piggy prince impaled himself, and says considering his track record it's only natural. But it means that if he wants a proper weapon he needs to get one outside the royal palace. He looks over at his uncle, saying that he is surprisingly thoughtful despite how he looks. His uncle tells him to close the window because it's distracting, and they banter. But with this the journey of 20 days had just begun. This journey involves a brief stop at Ellen County, a 3-day distance from the capital, then visiting Iron Lion Castle, another 2 days away, which is of course where Arwen is. They will rest there for the journey before returning to the capital, and currently he is stuck in a carriage for 3 whole days without moving. The person sitting opposite of him is no fun at all, because she only answers in yes or no. He sighs, and looks out the window, saying that since he has this time she should check his mana heart. As a side effect of using the hymn of true dragon slaying, his heart is completely empty, but it's about time that he refilled it. He starts to focus on his senses, the rattling vibrations of the carriage, the slightly cold breeze passing by, and the voices of the knights heard from outside, and he's going to gather all the little bits of mana he can hidden in between all of these things. He fills the empty heart as it starts swirling in. He's surprised by something, and asks when his mana heart grew to be this large. The status window says that it's because he attempted an extraordinary feat beyond his capacity, and glimpsed a fragment of that colossal will. He says it's the effect of forcibly using the hymn. Due to the attempt being reflected on his body, his mana heart has expanded. Due to the expanded mana heart, his physical constitution has changed significantly, and his body is now able to endure much more mana than before, and he has reached the stage of sword expert. The connection to the origin has improved somewhat too, and some of the restrictions on his authorities have been lifted. Third eye has improved significantly, and so has third ear. When he snaps back out of it, he just looks down dumbfounded, and Adalia asks if he's okay. He starts to move his arms around, and laughs, saying that he's gone yet another step further. They finally make it to Ellen County, and some men greet them, saying that they are honored to meet him like this. One of them is named Edgar of the Ellen family, and the other is Terence, the eldest son of the Ellen family, and they both greet him. Ian thanks them for the hospitality, and Edgar says that since the journey was long he must be exhausted, so he'll guide him to his room first. Ian starts looking around, and says that they said this was a weapon production site, and sure enough the entire mansion is filled with all sorts of weapons. However, they are just low-grade items that are merely flashy, and useless in combat. As they continue walking, he can't help but look at them all, and he says that looking at this it seems difficult to find the item he's looking for here. He asks Edgar if the Blacksmith's Guild is located within this territory. Edgar says that is correct. Ian tells him that he wants to take a look around there. As they continue walking, Edgar explains that blacksmiths are men rough in nature, and stubborn people, and when work is in full swing they often ignore even when the Lord visits. The words they spit out are as cold and crude as the iron lumps they handle. He continues talking, but Ian's attention gets drawn elsewhere as a hammer strikes away at hot steel, and he can't help but be drawn to it. Edgar explains that the heat from the furnace is intense, and if it's hard to endure he can tell him. Ian though is completely captivated by the noise of the iron being hammered, and Edgar asks what's wrong. Ian gets closer, saying that he's feeling the entire thing with his senses. The flames are burning brightly, the bellows hissing, and the blacksmith's hammer, and the iron. Among them all there is one exceptionally clear sound to him. The memory he's recalling is something very special to him, and it's the very first memory that he has as a sword. Adalia wipes away the sweat on his face, and he looks confused. She says that he was sweating too much, and realizes that he must have been in a daze. Then he looks back over at the old man hammering away. Some of the artisans starts greeting him, and Edgar introduces one of them as Zaxxon, and he is in charge of the Blacksmith's Guild. Ian says he sees, but he just keeps watching the old man hammer. Zaxxon walks over yelling at him, telling him to stop immediately, and bow to His Highness the Prince. Ian grabs his mouth, closing it, telling him that he's too loud. The rest of the artisans are too scared to speak up, but also look uncomfortable. He looks over at their weapons, saying that it's obvious they were dragged here against their will while working. He says that he can't believe they're doing things he didn't even order, and he tells them that their iron is going to cool down. Unless they want to let the furnace fire die out, they should stop standing like that. They quickly run back, grabbing their tools, and get back to work. Ian continues looking at the old man, and is completely enamored by the sight he is witnessing. He starts to feel the flames itself as if he is walking the path of the iron. Every strike is resonating deeper, and deeper with him, and he wonders just what exactly the sensation he is feeling is. Some time later, Edgar explains that for whatever reason, he has just been repeating the process of forging swords, and melting them down for the last 6 months. Ian asks if they are all failures, and Edgar says it's hard to say. Every sword he makes is said to be a masterpiece, so he is called the Master Smith of Swords. Even the swords he has made so far seem flawless to him. It is truly a mystery why he melted them all down. Furthermore, for the past month he has barely slept, and has been clinging only to his work. Since he is not a young man, their worry is not insignificant. Ian says that he is a true craftsman. Several days have passed since then. He visited the forge early every morning, and left late at night, and during that time the old man simply continued his daily work. The prince merely watched him in silence. Contrary to the tension caused by the rumor that the first prince was coming, it was almost surprising that there were no incidents at all. Finally, the day the prince was to depart, he was still there watching the man hammer away. He looks like he wants to say something, though he doesn't want to interrupt the man's work. He says that he had hoped to see it completed before he left, and turns. Edgar could tell that he was in deep regret. Ian tells Carl it was time to go. He was told there was a farewell party tonight, and they must depart early tomorrow morning. Edgar says perhaps that is why he hoped the first prince would see the sword completed by the master smith even for a moment. At the ass crack of dawn, Edgar ran over hauling cheeks, telling him that the master smith has finally completed the sword, and he looks so happy to tell him. Ian ran over there as fast as he could, and the master smith held the blade up, and began polishing it. It looks like a complete masterpiece. He bows, presenting it to Ian, and he says that he dedicates the sword to him. Ian starts to sing a song, saying heat it like the sun rising on the horizon, and cool it until its hue matches the king's crimson robes. If you do so, a sword like the sun, and a king shall be born. Ian looks down at the blade, asking if it has a name. The master smith says that they should call it Twilight. Ian asks if it's the twilight of dawn, or the twilight of dusk, and the master smith says for him it is dusk, but for him it may be dawn. Ian laughs, saying that he's surprisingly eloquent for a blacksmith. The master smith tells him that it's a relief, but we see his condition isn't good as he falls to his knees. Ian catches him as he passes out. Carl tells him that they should go, but Ian says that he should go tell his uncle that he'll be spending the night here. That night they set up camp, and we see Ian sitting beside the master smith. He tells him that the moment his highness stood behind him that day the sword took shape as if it was by destiny. The sword itself decided the day it would be born. Ian asks if that's what he thinks, and laughs, and tells him the truth, and he whispers something into his ear. Of course it's probably telling him that he's actually the sword Gruhorn. The master smith looks surprised, asking if that's the truth. Ian says it is, so how could he not understand this fellow's heart? The master smith sighs, and says that he sees, and understands, and he wants him to hand him that sword even if only for a moment. Ian does so, and he grips it as tightly as he possibly can even though his hands are shaking, and he says that he hopes that this sword will become as great as he is. Ian can't help but feel touched by the old man's words, and grabs his hand, saying that it certainly will. He then realizes that it was the master smith's final wish, as that was his last breath, and final words. Or maybe Unc just fell asleep. The next day Edgar brings him a sword, saying that while one cannot simply discuss the value of a sword made with one's soul, he believes it would be inconvenient for him to use, and he happens to have this magic sword to dedicate to him, so he should accept this instead. Ian says that it is good, and even if it's not high grade it's a good middle grade sword. Edgar then goes to ask about the other sword, and Ian says just a sword made by a renowned master smith. Pouring his soul into it is already a tremendous gift, yet to think that he would try to offer a magic sword in addition to that, and indeed the loyalty of the Ellen family towards the royal family is exceptional. Of course Edgar was trying to get the other sword back, and tells him that it truly is an honor, as he just accepts his place. He starts pulling his hair out, but just lets it be. Some time later his uncle says the carriages and the infantry will follow slowly behind, and the cavalry will ride ahead at maximum speed. They are behind schedule, so they have to hurry. Ian walks up behind him, saying he looks busy, and come to think of it he didn't even see a single bit of him the entire time they were in the county. Ian's uncle says that His Majesty had given him a separate assignment. Ian says he supposes his excursion wasn't free after all, and his uncle says he needs to get ready too. They plan to ride fast to reach Iron Lion Castle by tonight, so he'll have to ride a horse. Ian says that's not going to be possible since he doesn't know how to ride one. His uncle is confused, but of course Ian was a sword, so how would he have learned to ride a horse? On the road to the Iron Lion Castle, there were quite a few twists and turns along the way that made him throw up as he was struggling to learn how to ride a horse, and there was another time where his horse even ran away. What we see is Ian exhausted, and even if it wasn't the half day they initially planned, they managed to reach their destination in about a full day. As they are approaching it, Ian says that he's glad they made it, but he's impressed by Iron Lion Castle. The knights all come out to greet him, and a man named York of the Walloden family greets Ian as well as the Iron Lions. Ian says their spirit is overflowing more than necessary, and for the reason, well of course it's obvious that it's about Arwen, and he decides that it's time to stir things up a bit. He approaches her. She puts her hand over her chest, and bows, greeting him, saying that she has counted the days waiting to see him again. Of course all the Iron Lions are pissed because they're simps, and Ian says their reaction is definitely impressive, and immediate. But Adalia as well starts to let off her reaction, and it scares him a bit. He says that he needs to calm her down, and it takes a little bit before she snaps out of it confused. He says it's a good thing that he developed her slave mentality early on. Now it's time for him to continue, and he tells Arwen to follow him as they have much to catch up on. It would be even better if the Lion Knights came with him too. As they head to the training grounds, Ian says that he just wishes to witness the swordsmanship of the Iron Lions, said to be the best in the kingdom, and he asks who will show him the sword of the Iron Lions. Everybody looks around, and nobody wants to do it. He can tell that it's because he's the prince, and says that if his position burdens them he will not hold anybody responsible for the outcome of the spar, asking if there's still no one who wants to do it, and for the renowned Iron Lions to be so faint-hearted it seems the kingdom's best is just a bluff of a title. One of the men gets pissed, and he introduces himself as Dale of the Dennett family. He says though he is far too lacking to represent the sword of the Iron Lions, if he would permit him he would like to stand before him, and Ian says there's no need for permission since he asked for it first. Dale tells him to be careful as he charges in. Ian smiles, and meets his attack head-on. But much to Dale's surprise, he's the one who suffers backlash. He starts to spit up blood, and gets sent flying backwards. Ian asks who's next, and they look down at Dale surprised. One of them named Paul Rothheim says that Dale is only in his first year, but he is in his third. Of course Paul gets cooked too. And this continues with every single one of them, and the years keep going up. He defeats a 5th year, an 8th year, and keeps smacking them all until eventually it gets quiet, and nobody's challenging him anymore. He says that this is annoying, and he'd like to face the official knights now. But they're quite slow to move. He then calls out to Arwen, telling her that she will be coming with him when he returns. She smiles, and says that if that's what he wills. One of the men approaches him, which is exactly what he wanted to happen. He says he heard that he enjoys wagers, and he wants to make a small bet to liven things up. But of course Ian denies it immediately, saying that Arwen is not a tournament prize. That they could do something else instead. He tells Carl to bring him his sword, and he draws it, which is the magic sword Edgar gave him. He says that if he wins he'll give him this. Arwen is surprised, and so is the other knight. She tries to tell him that he doesn't need to do this, but he says that she is 100, rather 1,000 times more precious than the sword, because the value of a sword master cannot be compared to a mere sword. She looks surprised, and the knight says that he'll agree to this too, and he introduces himself as Dunham of the Fahrenheit family. He is an official knight of the Iron Lion Knights, and on the verge of achieving triple chain. Ian says that means he's still a double chain, and it makes Dunham a little annoyed. He says that the sword he's holding is the 17th sword made by the artisan called the Master Smith of Swords, and if he wins this sword shall belong to him. Ian says that's quite a coincidence, and draws the sword that the Master Smith poured his soul into, saying that he also happens to have a sword received from that Master Smith, but this is his 100th work. Dunham says he's never even heard rumors of the Master Smith making a 100th sword. Ian says he expects not, as it is his final work completed just a few days ago. Dunham says that's fine with him regardless, and although he walks the guided path of the sword, he can recognize the ceaseless effort within that path. To show a small token of respect for that, he will do his utmost in this spar. Ian laughs a bit at the misguided comment, saying the position was never one to call his own from the start, and that respect directed at him is enough if it comes from his people, as that's all he needs. He tells Adalia to watch closely as he starts to imbuism into his blade. It takes shape behind him, and he tells her that this is the path that she must walk from now on. She nods, saying yes, and of course her hymn is being activated as well, which I think is buffing him, but she says that she will surely do so. Meanwhile, his uncle is talking to York, asking how many times he's visited Iron Lion Castle now. York says this is the 4th time. His uncle thinks about it. York says the 4th prince has no interest in the throne, so he likely won't come. The 3rd and 5th princes visited while the 1st prince was on probation, and even the 2nd prince stopped by a short while. York puts his cup down, saying no matter how poor his reputation might have been, it is undeniable that the 1st prince was the legitimate heir of the kingdom. And for things to have reached this point, he surely bears a large share of the blame. If he, the commander of the 3rd Legion, had supported the 1st prince even a little, he would not have become so isolated. So why is he acting like a guardian only now after all this time? Vale says he's right. He certainly cast aside his nephew once. He was a man who would have been not just an incompetent ruler, but a tyrant. That was his nephew. One day when he scolded him for being intoxicated by some wicked potion, he got so furious he charged him with his sword. He was a hopeless scoundrel. When he returned to the north in such disappointment, his nephew sent him poison wine, shamelessly calling it a gift, and closing the letter with poison too. Of course out of sheer principle he stood on 10 toes, and drank that shit. He burned away the cheap poison procured from who knows where with his mana, and burned away what little familial affection remained along with it. However, that scoundrel who he thought would never change has become different. He endures grueling training, and is growing stronger by the day. York says that he said so himself that the first prince must never become king. But Vale says that the boy is now a completely different person than he was in the past, and tells York to give him a real chance. At least so that he may stand at the same starting line as the other princes, and he begs of him. York is surprised, saying that he just doesn't get it. He's got not a clue whether it is him or the first prince who has changed. First he needs to raise his head, as a man known as the Silver Lion shouldn't be bowing to him. A man barges into the room calling for York, saying that the first prince has done something. On the way to the training grounds, York tells him not to worry. Dunham knows his limits, so nothing serious will happen. Even in a live blade duel surely he wouldn't beat royalty senselessly. Vale says that it's not the prince they should be worried about. It is his knight. York says that he's become strange, he looks pale, and now he's speaking nonsense. But what they see in front of them is Dunham thrown toward them, already defeated. All of the knights say that His Highness has won yet again, and York asks what's going on. Vale says that he already told him that his knight was the one he should be worried about, because the prince is just different nowadays. Ian thinks about how his uncle always used to say that a knight truly began at 2 rings. We see that he actually struggled a bit with Dunham, and those words were no exaggeration. The current hymn of sparring is insufficient, but he can't bring out the hymn of true dragon slaying against a regular knight. In that case he starts to activate his hyper-focus trait, and everything becomes quiet except the enemy in front of him. He says that his body doesn't feel like his own when he uses this. As his eyes start to light up, he says it's the same sensation he had from back then. Dunham closes the gap, but Ian meets his charge, and they clash. Their auras collide, and they fight until Dunham gets sent flying backwards. Ian asks for the next to step up. We see him blocking attacks looking like he's enjoying it. He then charges in at another knight, causing him to go on the defensive. But of course that was what he wanted. He defeats him, then the next, then the one after that, and so on. Ian is overwhelming every single one of the knights that came out to train today, and he's enjoying every minute of it. Eventually it's just him left standing. The people who were actively stepping up begin to cheer him on, saying that he's already at 5 consecutive wins. His hymn starts to feel like it's being upgraded, and he's adding a whole new verse on top of it now, and only now does he rise holding the sword. The shape of the hymn begins to change. The grade of the hymn has now been upgraded to extraordinary. The hymn itself begins shifting to match its grade, and we see its form starting to change as it evolves into the hymn of dueling. His mana starts to disperse, and he says that he's exceeded his limits before he starts to fall forward. He drops to his knees as one of the knights runs over asking if he's okay, and saying they truly want to pay respect to the victory he achieved today. Everybody starts cheering him on, saying that was really cool, and that he's completely changed their minds. Ian's surprised that just a moment ago they were eager to rip him apart. York says that men are simple creatures by nature, and nothing excites them more than that. His uncle says that looking at his face he must have thought he would incur their resentment, but a fair defeat is more valuable than a foul victory. When both sides have fought their hardest, victory or defeat doesn't matter. The knights say that Dunham might be a little resentful though, since he has to offer up the sword he loves bragging about so much, but it's quite refreshing since he's been so arrogant about it. Ian says that he thought everything he knew had been forgotten, and abandoned along with the mana heart, but it seems that there was at least one thing that hasn't changed. Being gracious in defeat, and revering the strong, has always been, and always will be, the spirit of the knights. It is now time for them to depart as we see the knights coming to say bye to him, and Arwen. He says that he'd like for them to meet again next time, and York says that he'll pray for his health until then. Ian tells him to take care of himself as well, but also he tells York to please keep what happened during his stay a secret. York says that he thought it would be helpful if he made it known, but Ian says there is someone he wants to mess with just a little bit, and of course that's his brother Jillian. They ride up until sunset, and they start to set up camp. Carl says he's going to go scout the surroundings for a moment, and Ian tells him to go ahead. Arwen stares at him, but doesn't say anything. Ian says that she should adapt soon enough, and he's going to go inside, and rest. When he goes inside it's spotless, and Adalia is glad to see him. He says that the one he took in is supposed to be a sword genius with S-rank aptitude, yet she is still doing things only a maid would. He sighs, and hobbles over to his bed, and she asks if there's something he's displeased with. He says no, and she may leave. She says okay. Ian says that the Iron Lion Knights were different from what he thought they would be. When he used the authority of judgment, the majority of regular knights did not possess swordsmanship talent surpassing B grade. In the past, these were people who would have barely reached intermediate sword expert level even after a lifetime of grueling training. Ordinary people who would have faded away in vain. Yet such people have reached a realm equivalent to a sword expert in their mere 20s or 30s, and the caliber possessed by a superhuman has declined beyond comparison, but the caliber ordinary people has risen dramatically. That is precisely because of Mana Chain. His uncle is a figure who could have aimed for transcendence in the past. That is why he was so displeased that he threw away that possibility. In this era, it is one where there is not even a chance to build achievements beyond extraordinary grade, and in the end everything is due to the flow of time, and he hates to admit it that he does not know the era that well. So he will start learning again from the beginning. His uncle claps, saying that is a good mindset, and it is not too late yet. If he puts in the effort from now on, he can achieve his dream. Ian wonders what dream he is talking about, and his uncle asks if he has not already won the hearts of the Iron Lions. If it were the other princes, they would not have been able to mingle with him so casually, but it was a very wise judgment. Ian is confused, wondering what the hell is wrong with him, and asks if he has gone mad. His uncle asks if he does not remember the conditions of the bet he made with him. Ian says that if it is the bet about defeating the third prince that is still up in the air, but his uncle says no. Their bet was to defeat a double chain knight. Ian says in that case he practically won the bet already. His uncle says he will do his end of the promise from back then. He steps up, confusing Ian, and says his full government ID, saying that he shall officially support him. The first prince. Ian wonders what he is talking about, and then realizes it, which is not something he wants because he never wanted to be king in the first place. His uncle's declaration became a literal bombshell as everybody started congratulating him, thinking that with this his succession was guaranteed. Newly assigned royal knights and soldiers created a commotion, and new attendants and servants were sent from the palace, and he suddenly found himself standing at the center of it all. He finds this shit way too chaotic, and tells Carl to get them all out of here, but Carl says they have come by royal decree. Even if he orders them to leave, they will not listen. He says at least he should clear them out of his sight, as it is annoying him to death. The maid nods her head, and later he opens the windows to some peace and quiet, and enjoying himself until Jillian barges into the room asking if he is there. Ian asks what he wants, and Jillian says he played the fool quite well. He was secretly learning swordsmanship from his uncle, and even revealing such grand ambitions. Ian asks what he is talking about, and Jillian says he truly intended to save his face at least, so how could he do this, as he was going to let him lose without too much embarrassment. Ian says that is amazing, and he is grateful to the point of tears, but his brother says he has made a big mistake because he intends to make him pay dearly for deceiving him. Ian is frustrated because he has no interest in the throne, and he needs to figure out who started all of this. Sometime later he tells his uncle that he will play along for a while, so he should please back out at an appropriate time because he has no interest in things like the throne. He wonders why he went and started things without consulting him. His uncle asks if he is worried about his family, the Balorhand, as they are the shield that protects the kingdom from the monsters of the northern mountains. As long as their royal family and nobles do not forget the harshness of winter, nothing bad will happen to his family. Ian says that is a relief at least, but his uncle says it was only a matter of timing, as it was bound to happen anyways, and he wants to ask if he truly doesn't know the fate of the firstborn who fails to succeed the throne. The situation does not change just because he keeps crouching down. If he needs time to accept the situation, he will give him as much as he needs, but he needs to keep this in mind: the legitimacy of the firstborn does not disappear unless he is dead. Ian says that no matter how much time he is given, he won't change. What he really needs to find is his authority and power that had reached transcendence before. So there is no way he would want something as trivial as the right of succession to the throne. At least that was the way he was legitimately thinking. It is time for the banquet. And he was given a grand entrance as the eldest son of the royal family, and everybody turned staring at him. We see some people look annoyed while others seem happy. And even some people we have never seen before. And he says the banquet is where he changed his mind. If you've watched till the end, comment broccoli to let me know. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.